hip-hop could be a vehicle to help us move the culture, not just the culture of hip-hop, the larger culture that hip-hop was birthed from, to move us to where our ancestors really wanted us to go. Then the choice, what other choice do I have if the Spirit's telling me? I get a little choked up talking about it.
Whatever you heard of me ain't worthy to me. I'm just too cutthroat, verbal surgery. How you claim to know thyself when your shelf's too high? I keep mine's at eye level. What you trying to hide? Peace, beautiful family. This is Dr. Walter Hidalgo, and this is the Know Thyself podcast. The Know Thyself podcast utilizes the metaphor of the shelf in order to extrapolate the self. And the way we do that is we invite guests to come in and share something about themselves. And before I introduce my guest, just want to shout out a few of our sponsors, as we always do. Shout out to my brother Steve and his 2020 collections. My brother Emilio with his highly living gear. If you're looking for any coaching or workshops, check out knowthyself.tv. You can find me there. And if you're looking for beats among so many things, you can holler at my guests. And we're going to talk about that momentarily. You feel me? The next thing we do is I always like to shout out a group of individuals. And today I want to give a big shout out to all my fathers.
Thank you.
All my MCs.
Thank you.
My producers.
Thank you again.
And all my people that serve and empower our communities. Word. Because I got somebody here that I love, I respect, I admire, and I'm just so freaking proud of. My brother Courtland, aka the president of hip-hop. What's good?
What's happening, my brother? So good to be here.
You already
at your studio, Know Thyself.
Yes, sir. I'm grateful that you're here. You know, we're already building and chopping it up, and we're just continuing the convo right here, straight
Absolutely.
up. As we always do, I like to contextualize things. So, if we were to go back in time to a younger Court, what would we see? What would we hear? Because you are originally from?
I'm originally from the Bronx.
We're here.
The X. I'm back in the Bronx, but I was really raised closer. I was really raised upstate New York.
Okay, that's right.
In Newburgh, New York.
So shout out to Newburgh.
I moved to Newburgh when I was about 9 years old. Was there my formative years until I was 17. So Newburgh, shout out to Newburgh and BNY, shaped me in terms of just a lot of things, even in terms of the president of the hip-hop platform. I'll get into that, you know, as we move forward. I never thought I would be back in the Bronx. When I moved back into, you know, the 5 boroughs, I moved to Queens. And I was between Queens and Harlem for years. You know, all my family's in the Bronx. On my father's side of the family's in the Bronx. And, you know, I was in and out of the Bronx, you know, with family. Always had, you know, consider myself from the Bronx. But just never thought I would live back in the Bronx. And there was a time in my life where, oddly enough, I was home, you know, basically flirting with homelessness. Wow. And administering my situation with my children and trying to find the right place. And X marked the spot, and I was back in the Bronx.
Wow,
and it
fun.
was the best decision I ever made, and I don't see myself ever going anywhere. You know, so that's where I was supposed to be.
That's see, you know, I find it interesting, right? You know, because then you always have that 360 effect. You know, with some of my background is criminal justice. And Newburgh was considered having one of the highest like homicide rates at some point in the country.
Yes.
So, you know, Newburgh's no walk in the park, as similarly in the Bronx. You feel me?
I moved from the Bronx to Newburgh as a youngster, and I was, even though my father had told me, he said, you know, I remember him having that conversation because him and my mother separated, and he had told me about Newburgh, and as soon as I got up there, I was like, you know, whoa! I thought, you know, I'm coming from the Bronx, and it was a whole, because it was so concentrated. So, I mean, I'm more of a you know, laid back, never was, you know, gangster, anything like that. But I had to scrap, you know, immediately. You had to scrap out. You had to, like, you know, and it was definitely, it was tough. They tough up in Newburgh. As they say in Newburgh, no out of towners. Like, nobody comes up to Newburgh and runs nothing, right?
That's real, right?
And
you know what's interesting? I want to go back to what you said, because I remember you sharing that with me at one point, man. The brink of homelessness, like that, and that's what that's an easy layup for me. I'm assuming that's what probably one of the reasons that drew you to President of Hip Hop. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. And what the President of Hip Hop platform is doing. You know, we've just incorporated not-for-profit, waiting for the tax exemption, but our number one focus is homelessness, and we focus on, you know, helping transition our homeless population, mainly people, individuals, couples, families, in shelters, into permanent housing within the 5 boroughs, and some of the outskirts, Jersey, some parts of Westchester, but I work with shelters in the city. And I started doing the work, I want to call it by divine accident. Not too many people know this, first time I'm really publicizing it, but yes, I was basically homeless, technically homeless.
Wow.
But you know, I did have family and friends at that short period of time when I was in that situation, but technically I didn't have a home. And I ended up getting some help from an organization that a few years later I ended up working for.
Wow.
You know, and I still don't know to this day how I got the call from them, but I got the call from them. I needed a job. I had was doing some teaching, substitute teaching, and running some after-school programs, hip-hop education programs.
That's right.
And you know, it was a time of my life when I was transitioning out of what my profession was before in the banking industry.
That's right.
And you know, I brought a personal experience to the business, and I learned the business. It's a very, very tough business. You know, social work in and of itself is tough. And you know, we deal with a challenging population, but the most challenging part, as I was telling you, is really just so much of the bureaucracy and the red tape in dealing with city programs and things. You know, it's a lot of things are broken.
That's right.
And it just trickles down in terms of the type of the service that is provided, or lack of service provided, in places where we really need better service.
And I feel like, as I'm hearing you, I could only imagine how nuanced and cumbersome it became once COVID hit, in the sense of, you know, a lot of landlords, even tenants, but I hate this term, the homeless population. I hate that, because any of us could have been homeless.
Right,
easily.
absolutely.
Easily. That's just a fact. I have to anybody. I think I was homeless for a little bit too, yo.
And I tell you,
that's such a fact.
I've dealt with people who come in, and you talk about their stories of being highly. First of all, I was pretty, relatively, at least on paper, successful.
Yeah, that's right. Facts.
But you know, things can change.
That's right.
And success is really kind of, you know, an interesting thing to determine
in itself. That's a different convo. Yeah.
But you should hear the stories of some people that were living high on the hog and are just find themselves in these you know, situations of desperation. So it can happen to anyone. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a fact. I think that is definitely so important, and such a important task that, you know, we don't look at the nuances that exist within our infrastructures. I mean, I want to switch up the convo, because I think that's dope. And we said the president of hip hop, because I want to talk about how we met. I'll never forget it, and I think it's important. I don't know if you remember.
I do. I want to see if you do.
I want to see, and fill in the gaps. This is what's dope, right? So I if I remember, I think it was in the pyramid, I want to say.
Bing, bing, bing.
And I was with somebody, I don't remember who, but I was
Shout out to the Pyramid.
Yeah, shout out to the Pyramid.
And
Legend.
Actually, it's end of the week.
Facts. End of the week. Yes, it was
At
end
the
of the week.
Pyramid.
Shout out with end of the week, yo.
Yeah.
Shout out to my everybody there, yo. I was promoting something on hip hop and spirituality.
Absolutely.
And I'll never forget, I gave you a flyer and you looked at it and you said something in the lines of, like, you were, I don't know if you were like disappointed or disgusted with hip hop, or you were just like, I took a hiatus, but something was calling me to go out. Like, I felt something calling me. And you said something like, you reaffirmed it. Or you like, I think this was it. And I was like, come to this. Is this correct?
It's correct. The only thing that I want to straighten, I wasn't disgusted with hip hop or on a hiatus, but I had I'll bring it out a little later. There's something that I was reading at the time, and I was at a certain place in hip hop in terms of recognizing the spirituality in hip hop, and I realized that was part of my purpose.
What is hip hop?
Well, I'm gonna define it by how I heard it defined by KRS in a song called I don't think it's called "We Come Back," but that's the hook, right? And he defines it as intelligent movement, right? Higher, infinite power, healing our people.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yep.
But the hip part is when you say somebody's hip. That means, they're down, they're in the know on something. So being hip is a form of knowing, which is a form of intelligence, of having some information, right? Hop is a form of movement, and usually when you hop, it's a strong movement, typically forward, right? But it's very strong movement. The Hulk used to hop. Right, my house, right? So intelligent movement, and I love that because that definition, it resonated. But at the end of the day, it's how I believe hip hop at the end of the day has the power to and the purpose to help us move intelligently forward, progress out of the oppressed state that we have been in for so many centuries to overcoming, if you will, to the mountaintop and over to the other side, in the words of the great Dr. Martin Luther King. So I realized hip hop had that power, and it was my opinion that hip hop had that. I believe it's a fact that hip hop has that power. It's my opinion that hip hop has that purpose, and I'm a part of it.
Speak on it. And the way I know you and you're a part of it is you dab in the element of production, yo.
Yes.
You're the alchemist, not the DJ, right?
Not the producer.
But you are the producer who, talk to us about that. Smart Monkey,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But talk to us about what got you into production.
Everything was all by like divine accident, if you will. So maybe that's an oxymoron, because anything divine is not an accident, right? But in any case,
or in theology, we call it the Kairos moment, man. God's time.
That. Okay,
you feel me?
What
as
moment?
Opposed to Kairos.
Okay.
Because then you have the chronos, which is the Greek for the chronology,
right?
Where we look at things more linearly.
Time.
But Kairos is just, that's God's time. That's beyond.
Right.
You feel me? It's just, the nerd moment. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I was always the guy, right, at the lunch table that did the beats. Sometimes, cats would be like, "Yo, Court, you're going a little too all over the place with the, the little, off rhythms and all that." But I was the, banging on the lunch table. But I never looked at, and then I've been, early in the Bronx, dip, dive, so socialized. Time to make you realize that I am qualified to be behind, all that stuff, So, I was just, I was that person from very early. But never thought it was anything I was going to, do, professionally or take seriously. And I had, I started realizing this was probably in 29 going into 30, so pretty late. I was secure in a career at the bank, private banking, right? It's JP Morgan now, but it was Chase and Chemical before then. So I was on, finishing school at Stern at NYU. So I was on, in terms of paper, a path that was like, hey, this is great. Here's a guy from the hood, who was book smart. I was always book smart, right? Doesn't mean I was really smart, but I was book smart and I had a persona that just worked well. And I was able to move along within that arena. But there was a time when I realized, wow, always being a hip hopper, but I realized, whoa, how much hip hop could really make a difference. And I was like, because I had become more kind of into black empowerment and things of that sort, I saw hip hop as a channel. And oddly enough, a group from Newburgh, dope group, they were like, hey, Court, I knew them when they were younger. They were like, yo, Court, we know you're smart, right? You got, about, paperwork, contracts, this, that. Can you manage us? And I was like, I'll help out. I'm a little busy, but y'all dope. Y'all really dope, and I want y'all to, do well. So I'll do whatever I could do. So one of the guys wanted to make beats. So I ended up knowing somebody. Actually, it was shout out to Ty Harding at On Point, and he worked with C4. They had done production for like LL. They did the beat for Put It In Your Mouth by Akinele, stuff like that.
Classic.
So they had an Ensonic EPS 16 plus. So I said, look, they said you could borrow it, right? So I told, group, hey, come down, use the machine, whatever, sitting in my living room. That never particularly happened. So as it was just sitting there for a couple of months, I said, let me plug this in and just see what it's about. And once I plugged it in, man, the plug is still in and the power is still on.
Yeah, that's so, like, as soon as you were saying that, I thought about like when hip hop started, right? They were plugging, you feel me? But I think this is beautiful. I'm loving everything you're saying.
Shout out to the original Dark Side.
Yo,
I ended up producing for them, and they're from Newburgh.
Oh, that's what? Shout out. I want to talk to you because what happened there was this intersectionality of entrepreneurship and hip hop. You merged them together. You became the producer, right? What advice would you give to that young person that's following your path?
To me back then, or just a young person that's kind of moving in this way?
Yeah, moving to the producer role.
Or as a producer?
Yeah.
Just bang out. Of course, you're a product of all that you've heard, growing up. And let that express itself in your interpretation. Don't try to duplicate anybody else, of course, that's out at the time. Or even from before. Don't try to really duplicate, take the influences, but just bang out. Let it flow. And keep doing it. Keep perfecting your craft. Because the more hours you put in, the more you just get better and better at it. There are levels of talent. Some people have, just a higher level of talent. But it's the same advice. If it's something you love, then you continue to do it. Try to make some money off of it. But just like I would tell anybody, a ball player who loves to play ball. I got a cousin who's two cousins. One's over 50, one's pushing 50, and they still ball all the time. They don't make money off of it. They were good high school, college players and all that, but you don't stop because it's something you love to do. So, as Puff says, don't stop. Just keep doing it. Try to maximize, but put the love first.
I want to talk about something that connected us, and you already mentioned this before, but one of the ways that you and I connected is the spiritual side.
Right.
Particularly with hip hop, but how much does your faith influence the work that you do?
My faith is the reason why I do the work that I do. I transitioned from, on this paradigm and in this construct, I was in a beautiful position. being one of only a very few black people, and I was young at the time, being groomed and being raised up in one of the top banking financial institutions, and a part of their institution that was very elite. I did not have a client who did not have at least 5 million in an account with us. So again, like I said, private banking, I was dealing with true story. I started in private banking on my 21st birthday. All right? 21st birthday, September 26, 1991. 30 Rock. I had a nice cubicle. At that time, it was a nice cubicle. And my window overlooked all of Central Park and the rest of the city.
Wow.
So I'm 21, then I'm going to school at night at NYU. And I'm being groomed like, hey, you can really move forward. And I did. But, that's a great position. 30 Rockefeller Plaza, 49th floor.
Ooh.
Beautiful cubicle. Wasn't an office, but it was a beautiful enclosed high cubicle, so you couldn't see unless you came inside. And it was a balcony there, so I could walk out the little door. I wish I had pictures.
Yeah.
I could walk out the little door onto the balcony, overlooking. You couldn't tell me I wasn't the man, and everybody else thought like, oh, Court's the man, So why did I leave that? Why did I just jump ship and then get into a heck of a struggle? Some of it was youth and not knowing how to transition properly, but it was my faith knowing that this wasn't for me. And when it hit me that hip-hop could be a vehicle to help us move the culture, not just the culture of hip-hop, the larger culture that hip-hop was birthed from, to move us to where our ancestors really wanted us to go. Then the choice, what other choice do I have if the Spirit's telling me? I get a little choked up talking about it.
Yeah.
And people thought I was crazy. And I jumped a little immaturely. I could have transitioned a little better because I just said F it, And I actually ended up dropping out of Stern because I was doing all my stuff at night, so it took me a longer path. I ended up getting an associate's degree from NYU, and I was at Stern School of Business, still plugging through because I was able to continue to move forward because I was still doing great work and getting showing that I was being educated by a great institution, and the bank was paying for it.
That doesn't happen often now no more. That's
I
a
left
fact.
all of that a little over 20 years ago, and the path has been a great path and a heck of a story that's still, the best parts are being written now, or the manifestation is being written now, So I forgot what the original question was, but and why that happened is when I started, in that position, my first two things I got to mention. The first set of, this is pre-internet and all that, like I said, 1991, the first set of accounts was a set of family accounts, right? Never heard of the name or anything like that. And I'm going to say it because it's the truth. And I had to administer the accounts that they had with us. And it was mostly securities. But I was learning the business. Bottom line is the family accounts, trust accounts, estate accounts, all of that was Rothschild. I had never heard of them.
Wow.
But so that was before all the talk about on the internet and all that. Then you started hearing the name and they run the world and this, that, and the third. But it was a family of accounts. I didn't deal with them directly. It was mostly dealing with accountants, lawyers, and people that represented them. But that was the family of accounts that I had to work on day to day.
Wow.
And I had never heard of that from a hole in the wall until years later you start hearing how such a big name it was. All I knew it was that I had to be on point every day and every second, in servicing these accounts, and then from there I worked with some really, really, well-known and wealthy families and, just old money and that sort of thing. But at that time, while I was going to school at night, being groomed, I picked up a book because I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness by my mother. Real strict Jehovah's Witness.
Sure. Yeah.
My father, R.I.P. my father, he died when I was a teenager, and he was more of more hustle mode, and we didn't have as much time as together as I would have liked.
Yeah.
So it was really the influence of my mother and being raised as a Jehovah's Witness. So I was raised to be a minister in that organization.
Wow.
And so it was even a big deal when I left that as a youngster and decided to kind of go outside of that and go into what was considered worldly banking,
Right.
But
right.
while I was doing that,
Yeah.
early I picked up a book called Soul on Ice off 125th Street by Eldridge Cleveland. So picture me, I read that, ate it, like, argh. So now I'm reading all kinds of stuff regarding anything black empowerment and the struggle and starting to get knowledge on that while I'm at school at NYU being groomed to be a service, the other side. So imagine the conflict that's going on spiritually within me, as I'm educating myself on this.
Yeah.
But yet this path is laid out for me right here. Come, here you go. We're giving it to you. And that was just a heck of a reconciliation, that took a lot of time for me, but it powered my decision because I had to make a choice. And then what powered my decision also was my mother raising me with such a strong biblical and spiritual background, even though I didn't stay within the Jehovah's Witness organization. Certain things you just don't leave you in terms of a spiritual foundation. So that's just, and then my father always put more of a street side in me. He would always say, that's why I say book smart. He would say, boy, you book smart. I love it because I was on the short bus. But he said, you get some street smarts with you and you start, doing the math on all the stuff that you're being taught, right? Because he loved the way my mother raised me, but he would always try to put things in my head that didn't really sprout until I got a little older and after he was gone. But thank God they were there, and then now it's all starting to balance out. Took me a little while,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
So all of that is a culmination of the president of hip hop.
That's powerful. And you know what? It's interesting because see how the divine continues to work. This is not braggadocious stuff at all, but I gave my brother a book, and it's on the Hebrew prophets. Because what is a prophet? God calls you. You feel me? And I feel like God called you, my brother. You know what I'm saying?
I feel the same way.
The work you do, particularly with young people in the community, it is a special calling, man. And I see the divine working in you because it's about taking us out of our comfort zone, Isn't that struggles where we find the divine?
Absolutely.
As we always do in the Know Thy Shelf, we invite guests to share something that comes out of their shelf, my brother.
I will. Can I just tell a Newburgh story?
Oh, yeah, do it.
And just with what was interesting about Newburgh, I moved and I went to a school called Washington Street School, right? In Newburgh. It was a block away from me. And right behind Washington Street School was George Washington headquarters, which is a historic area where his headquarters were during the Revolutionary War. So that's like, big historic area. You can go there, check it out, this, that, and the third. But I always would see, and there's a statue and everything, so I always see George Washington, our first president. And so that was always right there in front of me. Every time I went to school, Washington Street School, George Washington, all in my head. And I saw hip-hop nation and culture as something that was an alternative. So I grew up seeing the president of the United States, George Washington, the first president of the United States, in front of my face all the time. And I felt like the other side of that would be the president of hip hop. I looked at you, you looked at me. And it just, that was just part of how I grew up every day seeing that. And that's where that concept came from, like, no, we need our own. Hip hop is about building its own. We need our own. And that was my communication to the statue that I would see all the time.
That's deep. I like that.
So the shelf.
What you got for us today?
I got two things.
Okay.
All right. You talked about Smart Monkey, which was the name of the studio, Smart Monkey Studios. So I brought. He's been through a little bit. I brought call him Math, right? Because he knows a lot. So my cousin brought this back as a gift for my studio from one of the islands, and he was actually holding a book before the move when we became homeless, right? The move out, the book broke off and fell off, and injured his head. The glasses fell off, but we put the glasses back on. But realized that he don't necessarily need the book no more. It's in his head, and his name is Math, short for. Just be careful.
I got you.
All right, his name is Math because it's short for Methuselah, who was the, as far as the Bible is concerned, the oldest living person in history, right? So I said, okay, this is he represents the knowledge to me. So who would have more knowledge than somebody that lived longer than anybody? And so that's where Methuselah came from, shorten it to Math, math, right? Methuselah. It's really, his name is Methuselah. Put the little swerve on it.
Right.
And he got all the math. He knows the math. So that's where it's like, okay, my little symbol and object where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna talk to the smart monkey. You know what I mean? to get a little, to get some wisdom and feedback.
Yeah.
And then my second one is, this was what I was reading when I met you.
Oh, snap.
And as you see, it's beat up. And it's signed by the Blast Master.
Yes.
Okay? The Gospel of Hip-Hop. Obviously, I've been through it. I've been through it a few times, right? it's used. It's very used.
That means you make full use of it.
Let me put this book here. And those are my objects.
I love both of them. Both. Everything, right? And I remember reading KRS's book as well. I went to he had a book signing in Harlem, and I got to connect. That was the first time I got to meet him and stuff.
Okay.
That's when I was working at the Riverside Church. Wow. I'm so proud of you.
I should have brought your book too.
Yeah, nah. Yeah. Yo, that's another thing. Yeah, Beyond the Four Walls. Right. The Rising Ministry of Spirituality and Hip Hop. A small plug right there. Definitely check that out. But I'm so proud of you, man.
Thank you.
I'm humbled to have known you, to be in the presence, as I always say, when two or more are gathered, the G.O.D. is here.
Absolutely. I want to say I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Very proud of you, of what you do, how you just have continued to connect your path, your divine path, and, and recognizing hip-hop's place and value in our world.
Word.
Spiritually, because so many people don't really look at that part of it.
Yeah, and especially around this time, man, you already know,
Absolutely.
right? If people want to find you, my brother, give us all your information and what you got going on, and how can people connect with you?
I told you we just incorporated the president of hip hop, not for profit. Actually, are doing business as prioritizing our homeless humanity. So we still
that's right, yeah.
Right? See what I did?
We stay keeping it in, right? Can
exactly.
flip it.
But our first thing is now independently. What I'm doing is I'm doing the work of what we call rapid rehousing, which is helping basically, in a nutshell, working with the shelters and our homeless population, and working with landlords and real estate brokers to find the matches to transition, our homeless population into permanent housing. So it's a lot of work. You can right now. The best way to reach me is social media. So on Instagram, it's at the President of Hip Hop. You can find the same one at the President of Hip Hop on Facebook, or Courtland, Courtland Hankins, Courtland Hankins, on Facebook. And as far as just the website, all that's being developed and everything. And it's funny because I got doing so much. It's hard to find time to do the promoting, the marketing, and so much other stuff.
Yeah.
Because we've been doing it just on a shoestring.
Word.
But we've been doing it. So just follow me there. You can reach out there, and then as things grow and develop, I'm trying to start posting every day of the work that's being done. So I'm getting better at that. but you'll stay abreast of what I'm doing and watch it grow and watch it flourish.
Word. And as I said, I'm so proud of you, man.
Thank you, sir.
And you know how Nori and the Drink Champs, we shout him out. He always says we got to give flowers to people while they're still alive, man. And I want to give you the flowers, man, of how proud I am and humble.
Thank
You know what I'm saying? To know you. As we always do in the Know That Show podcast, we end with a quote. How fitting. This is a Zen proverb, and it reads as such. Knowledge is learning something every day.
This is a homage beat.
Wisdom is letting go of something every day. Interesting.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Peace, family.
Peace. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Hip hop, we here.
Absolutely, ain't going nowhere. We will be forever and ever and ever.
Where the cream at?